Maybe I do just wanna be alone with you.
Madam Moderator, you have exactly 50 minutes from now to 12:45. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. And welcome to this session on bankable projects for impact investing. The way we've structured it, we want to leave a lot of time at the end for the audience to be able to ask questions. So I'll ask a few introductory questions to everyone. And we have, I think, Scott, you've prepared a presentation, not a presentation, but a short address to give us some key highlights. And then I'll ask some questions of our other panelists. And then after those introductory questions, we'll just go straight and open it up to the audience so that you can interact with the panel. We're talking about bankable projects for impact investing. Bankable projects, especially from the perspective of entrepreneurs who are looking for financing, but also from the perspective of others. We're going to look at how bankable projects can be developed, the challenges involved in the process, how to overcome them, potential sources of funding, and other ideas around how do you develop a bankable project for impact investing. I'm going to start by asking each panelist to tell us a little bit about your organization, introduce your organization and what you do to us. And then from the perspective of your organization, tell us what a bankable project is, perhaps with an example or with some examples. So we'll start with Scott, and then we'll come down the line.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. So my name is Scott Thacker. I work for the United Nations Office for Project Services, where we work in multiple countries to provide assistance to governments around infrastructure planning. I lead a team at the University of Oxford, where we develop tools, methodologies to help support infrastructure planning for sustainable development. In terms of the broad statement about bankable projects, then I think it's important to think about bankable projects as being well-structured projects that are well thought through, well analyzed, with regard to the outcomes that they might seek to achieve, but also the risks that they might face. And it's important for these to be well understood. To bring up just a couple of other points, we're talking here about projects that will support the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's important really to understand how a specific project and the specific projects you're developing might then contribute towards the different goals. Okay, and this is really useful to catch the ear of investors, but also to align that project and its outcomes with the direction of travel of the government. And we see some great work here in the government in Ghana towards establishing a vision in the future of addressing certain SDGs, and it's to align those projects with that direction of travel. And sort of beyond understanding the outcomes in terms of sustainable development, it's getting into some specific details around the project itself, ensuring that there's a business case for this project along the life of the project. Infrastructure, if we're talking about infrastructure, is typically very long life. It can last for decades into the future. So it's important to understand that there's an economic benefit for this project for many years, that there's a financial benefit, and that the risk environment has been thoroughly explored.
Thank you very much, Scott, for that. And Trish, tell us more about yourself. Same question, and your take on what a bankable project is.
So my name is Trish. I work with a private equity company, so an investor, called Breakout Capital. We're based in both Nigeria and Ghana. From our perspective as an equity investor, what makes a project bankable? There are a number of key things that we look at. So for our firm, we look across all industries, almost all industries. And we're very excited about supporting businesses that are looking for capital to unlock growth, or that are just coming into a period of great growth. So what does bankability mean to us? What sort of projects or investment opportunities are most exciting for us? There are a number of things that we need to see to get excited about a project, to think that it's really bankable. First of all, we need to see that it's a proven concept, right? So you find oftentimes lots of sponsors or lots of entrepreneurs are coming up with new ideas, and new ideas are great, but new ideas are also risky. So for us, in terms of mitigating the downside, we look for ideas or concepts that are already proven, where there's an addressable market, there's a sizable market, and one that has strong demand already existing. So you've taken off demand risk, and you know that there's demand for the product, and it's a sizable market. The second thing that we look for in the sponsor or the team that's coming to us is a proven track record. And again, these are different things that we look at to help mitigate the risk. So we want to make sure that whoever is coming to us has a proven track record, maybe not in this current business, but in a related field, so that we know that execution risk, again, is lowered. These are people who know what they're talking about, they know the space, and they've done it before. We're also looking for people who have clear and realistic goals. Oftentimes, you have people come and there are lots of opportunities, they want to chase them all. The truth of the matter is resources are finite. Your time is limited. There may be only 1, 2, 3 key things that you need to be able to accomplish for your business to succeed. Focus on those key things, those 2, 3 key things that you need to execute to make your business successful, and have a plan about how you're going to carry them out. And make sure that you have the team or the resources necessary to execute on those key factors that will help you attain success. And I think another important thing is also just showing that the sponsors have skin in the game. So again, someone made a point earlier on, are you going to get funding if it's only an idea or if it's only a concept? There are many places that you can get funding from. You can get funding from yourself, from your friends, from your family, from angel investors. But for us, what's important for us to see is that you also believe in the project that you're putting forward. We want to see that you have skin in the game. We want to see that you're invested. We want to see that you're aligned. So it's very important for us to see that you believe in it enough to put your money where your mouth is. And then also, another thing that's really important for bankability is making sure that you as the sponsor has also thought through all the risks inherent in that business, all the ways it could go wrong, and what you would do to help mitigate those risks. At that point in time, when you're coming to us and you're looking for financing, you hopefully understand the business more than even I do. So you should understand all the things that could potentially be pitfalls and have an idea about how to address those things. If you're coming to me with a plan that's well thought through, you have the relevant team, the team has relevant experience, you're fully aligned, and you've thought through the potential pitfalls and ways to mitigate that, that to me is a very good step in sort of seeing that this project is bankable. Sort of to your early point around examples of companies that we've invested in that have gone really well, I can give you one. Our most recent example, our most recent investment in Ghana was a company called DTRT. They're an apparel manufacturing company. The sponsor, Madame Salma, had a textile company, initially a very small one, I think about 50 workers or so. She invested, or she brought on board 2 other entrepreneurs. They already had track record experience in terms of building multi-million-dollar businesses and giving access to her to an addressable market. This is the garment or apparel manufacturing market worth billions of dollars around the world. They had access to those markets. They partnered with her to help put in place processes, access to market, and operations that could then be scalable. So that by the time they came to us with a proposition, a lot of these things had already been addressed, and we were then able to give them the growth capital to help unlock that and scale the business. Where we then came in was providing help around governance, help around health and safety and those sorts of things. But they already had a very strong handle on what their business was and how it was going to grow to become hopefully a very large and successful one.
Thank you very much. And Ernest.
Thank you. So my name is Ernest Peche. I work for Société Générale. I'm a Deputy Managing Director of SG in Ghana. Société Générale Group is a leading banking entity in Europe. And we are present in about 67 countries, close to 150,000 people globally. And here in Ghana, we have around 42 branches across the country and close to 900 staff. So when it comes to bankable projects, I will say that as a bank, each project could be potentially bankable for us, obviously. But Just not to repeat what Trish just said, because this is typically what we do also as a bank. We do have to evaluate the risk, of the project which is being proposed to us. But beyond that, what I may say also is that precisely we know many of the entrepreneurs who are coming to the bank, they have an idea, they believe in their idea. Most of the time the idea is very good. However, turning an idea into a business is really what sometimes is actually missing. So to make the project bankable, it has to be something which can be turned into a profitable business in the future, which can generate enough revenues, enough cash flows, to pay back the facility which is being given, and also who can also mitigate the risk in the future. So for that, in addition to traditional tactics that we do have, we have created a space to bring the entrepreneurs to partner with all other, I would say, partners that they need to make their business sustainable. So it could be, business planning, it could be taxation, it could be accounting, it could be HR aspects. So we have a space, we have actually a dedicated entity which is helping entrepreneurs to turn some of the ideas that they have into these, long-term profitable businesses which can be financed by a bank. Especially when it comes to Sustainable Development Goal projects. For us, what matters is really, really the impact. Because we know that if the impact is very clear, is clearly outlined and identified as such, therefore, it actually opens the door for additional financing partners. And this one, the bank can also help to look for those kind of financing partners who are looking to finance SDG type of projects, as long as we can demonstrate that these projects are, addressing these goals. So an example which is very simple, typically we have our multilateral organization, which is partnering for, I would say, renewable energies. So when we have recently a customer who is financing a $2.5 million, I would say, solar panels, we are able actually to partner with this multinational organization to get some, I would say, assessment of the project and some kind of benefit, from the entrepreneur later on, once the projects deliver, to facilitate the financing and the return on this kind of big project that the customer is pushing for.
Thank you very much for those perspectives. I'll continue and circle back to you, Scott. From your perspective as an infrastructure, sustainability and resilience specialist, are there any reflections on the SDGs and on really bankable projects that you'd like to share from that perspective?
Yeah, thank you. And I think that there is a growing interest internationally from different communities and from different parts of the investment community in the SDGs. And so I think that it creates this enormous need to be able to understand the influence of these projects on the SDGs. There's been quite a bit of work growing on this. Some work that we did at the University of Oxford was to identify that, in fact, 92% of the 169 targets of the SDGs can be influenced by different types of infrastructure. So it makes infrastructure is profoundly central towards achievement of the SDGs. So it's about, in developing a project, to be able to understand all of these different influences that you can have. So if it's a road, it's not just a road to transport a certain number of cars every day or vehicles. These vehicles are enabling economic opportunities for people within the region, enabling trade, economic growth, enabling access to and opportunities within society. So it's about understanding this more broadly to be able to target the SDGs. In terms of an example then, an example not of a specific project, but of a context is the island of Curacao in the Caribbean, where there's been a great emphasis of the government to be able to develop a strong national vision in relation to the SDGs and to develop a national infrastructure plan comprised of different projects that all pull together in the same direction, with the same direction as the government towards meeting out a long-term plan. And this is useful because it sort of transcends the typical political cycles, which can often kind of create certain risks around project development. And so I could sort of recommend and encourage towards work in this direction, which I think has already started in Ghana, which is excellent.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing those perspectives. I'll circle back to Trish and just to pick up from where Ernest left off on impact. We're talking about driving the SDGs, and how important is impact to you as a private equity fund? And I'll ask you the same question also, Ernest. When you evaluate a business opportunity, how does impact factor into your decisions practically, and how important is this?
So impact to us is very important. I think historically, people used to think of it in sort of very different terms, right? So you're either investing to make money, you're investing for profit, or you're investing for impact. And it initially, historically, had been thought of as one or the other. But increasingly, you realize that the two really do need to go hand in hand. As a business, you're operating within a community. Your workers come from that community, and you do well if the community does well. The market that you're selling into is a part of the community. If you're serving them well, if you're doing well, your business does well. So for us at Barrett, I mean, we monitor sort of a lot of these impact metrics just as much as we monitor financial metrics with the companies that we invest in. So yes, we'll look at things like how much are you growing revenue, what new products are you bringing out, but equally we'll measure things like what is the net employment that you're creating, that we created for this period? What is the knowledge transfer that we've been able to achieve? How many of the locals are moving up into senior management positions, things like that. Even beyond this, sort of on a company by company level, we'll also try to improve or even encourage the companies to do more for their workers. So for instance, with this company that I was talking about initially, DTRT, they started with 50 workers. Right now we're at about 2,300 workers, and they're actively finding ways to improve the working conditions for the people who are with them. They've started a second shift because they realized that a lot of the people who were coming in wanted to go back to school. So if they did a second shift, that would allow people to work maybe in the evenings, but then in the daytime go to classes, and it helps the business to grow as well. We've also invested in a clean energy company because it helps to bring down costs, and it sort of also addresses the SDGs. So both at a firm level for us in terms of the companies or the opportunities that we look at, within our partner companies that we then invest in, and then also even choosing the companies that we'll invest in terms of the clean energy company that I was speaking about, and actively finding ways for them to help promote some of these SDGs directly.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting to hear from your perspective as an investor. Ernest, I'll ask you the same question. I mean, how important is impact? You started alluding to it in your previous response. But when you evaluate a business opportunity as a bank, how does impact factor into your decisions?
So as far as SG is concerned, we really believe that SDG should be in the heart of our strategy. I mean, it's difficult for us to say that sometimes we do SDG, sometimes we don't. So we really believe that as a company, we need to really act on the responsible manner. So as such, SG is, for instance, one of the founding members of the Responsible Banking, and we are also a member of the United Nations Collective Committee fighting against climate change. So in essence, what we do is that we've decided to reduce our exposure and even our revenues, our business, when it comes to, let's say, coal financing, for instance. So our target is to continue to reduce it to zero in the next 10 years. So as such, as of today, the financing of renewable energy is more than 50% of our overall portfolio on energy. And this is the trend that we are taking as an organization. Each time we are evaluating a project, we always integrate a component of SDG. We integrate a component of environment. We're making sure that companies that we do finance are also mindful and protective of the environment. So for us, it's really like, being part of the ecosystem in which we're living in. We need to also be embracing this and live with that on everyday basis. Even though it may mean for us to make some choices and do some businesses, that's fine. But we believe that the direction of SDG is where we should be going. Everybody should be going, regardless.
Thank you very much. So entrepreneurs in the room, you hear it. Even all the investors are looking at impact as a metric, and it's important, even if you're not a social business, to be thoughtful about the impact that you're having on communities. I'm going to end with this last question and then open up to the audience, and it's really around financial return, which is the other half of the puzzle. And we talked about impact. But when you look at financial return, for those of you who are financial institutions or a fund, how have you exited your investments in a way that has given you return? Or how do you plan to exit for the fund and for Société Générale? How do you look at your exits? I know that your instruments are slightly different, but how are you ensuring that there is a strong financial return? And then to Scott, any reflections on financial return? So maybe we'll start with Trish this time, and then Ernest, and then Scott.
Certainly. So in terms of exits, that's obviously, in fact, exits are a major part of the things that we think about even before we enter into a transaction. Someone once said that it's like you're getting married and you're thinking about the divorce even before you walk down the altar. But it's very important because we're only invested for usually anywhere between four to a maximum of about 7 years, usually about 5 years or so. So it's within the medium term. And what we need to think about as investors is a way to structure that investment and structure that partnership such that when you approach year 4 or year 5 and you're then exiting the company is strong enough to stand on its own and to continue to grow on its own. It's to no one's benefit for us to leave and for there to be value destruction, or for the exit process to be one that causes value destruction. Otherwise, you're not a good partner, and you don't. It's not sustainable. So for us, we think of exits in a number of different ways, and we discuss this with the sponsor or with the business owner even beforehand. Historically, and it might be a mix of different things. So sometimes we will give the sponsor the option or the opportunity to buy back the stake of the company from us. And we've done that. That's something that we've done in the past that's worked very well. Sometimes we will also look to exit to another buyer, so a secondary sale to either another private equity fund or another financial institution that thinks they can take the company on sort of the next leg of the journey. And of course, all of this is done in agreement with the sponsor, because it's another partnership. We're not just sort of uploading the shares onto someone and sort of wishing them good luck. So we might exit to another financial buyer. Sometimes we also might exit to a strategic. So sort of a larger international player who thinks that this is a really interesting opportunity in that region, and so they would like to take over our shares or buy into that company, and then again to take the company to another growth story. So there are a number of different instruments. Sometimes it's a mix of different instruments that we look at, but all of this really is decided on or sort of revisited on a regular basis, and it's things that we discuss with the sponsor of the company to make sure that it's the right decision for that company.
Thank you, Ernest.
Okay. So for me and also for the banks, typically our financing is mostly on the debt. Okay, so on the debt, it's a contract, so it's a commitment for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. And what we are proud most of the time is that we see our clients growing their business, and we know that if they're not successful, they cannot repay the debt that has been given to them. So our objective is precisely to identify those projects and accompany those investors, those entrepreneurs, which we feel at that point in time that their project will deliver, because their success is our success. So as much as they can generate a good return on their side, they will be able to pay us back. So this is no different, when it comes to SDG as the others. And again, as I mentioned before, we do believe that SDG programs and projects are also very beneficial, and we have seen numerous of them being well managed. And therefore, for us, it's no different.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you. I think my comment here is that this falls under one of the aspects of a project being well analysed and well structured, and that it should understand both the kind of the economic returns that could be expected kind of for a country over its life more broadly, but also, of course, the financial returns to investors. And I would encourage those developing projects to sort of know your investors, to understand, based on your type of project in your kind of situation and country and context, what type of rate of return they might be looking for. So to be able to have conversations and to understand the investment environment.
Thank you very much, panel. We'll open it now to the audience. And for those of you who were in the opening panel, you know that I have a few strict rules. Keep it short. No good morning. Don't tell us how much you've enjoyed the panel. We know. Go straight to your name, your organization, and your comments in 30 seconds, nothing more. We want to get as many people as possible to ask questions. We have up till about 11:45. So I think we have someone helping with the microphone. So one hand up already. We'll take about 4 questions, and then we'll come back to the panel and then back to the audience. So if you have a question, just keep your hand up. Make sure you get the eye of the person with the microphone. Is there a person with a microphone? Yes.
Thank you very much, moderator. Amarabi is my name, representing Amra Foundation. It's an NGO. I want to know from the three panelists if they factor in sponsorship in their operations, because NGOs, we don't make profits. We do charity. So let's say if my organization have identified a project that will impact the society, let's say we want to provide water for a community that need the water. So when we submit our sponsorship to you, will you be in a position to help us execute the project for the community? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Esther Emanuela Spio, and I'm with the Ministry of Finance. My question is, what are some of the common mistakes that young entrepreneurs make as far as developing bankable projects are concerned? And what do you do to help them overcome some of these mistakes? And specifically to Trish, if she can highlight some of the common mistakes that Ghanaian and Nigerian young entrepreneurs make. Thank you.
Thank you. There was one hand here and then another one on the other side.
Hello, my name is Gloria Hansen, and I'm the founder of ASAP Education. What I want to ask, just as the gentleman asked, it's like a social enterprise education that we do, basically on vocational skills with technology. And those that we tutor or we train are mostly those outgrown orphans that we get on the street. And what I want to ask is that we are focusing on SDG Goal 4 and 8 as of now, quality education with vocational skills and technology, and also 8 decent jobs. So after we train them, we put them in the industry where they are trained. But the fact of the matter is that being here, I've heard investment, entrepreneurship, but I've not heard anything that is going to, in line of what we are doing as social enterprises, funding for it, all right? Because we are focusing on quality education, but there are less privileged people that cannot get that quality education that we are talking about. The education from the grassroots that are free, the basic, the senior high that are free. But there are some too that are well equipped in vocation. Okay, they might not all go through but they have some skills that can be developed. That is what we are doing. So please, can you tell us where we could get those help from for our social enterprises? Thank you.
Thank you. And there was one hand on this side. No, there was one at the back. We'll take you in the next round.
Hello, my name is Shelter, Ghana Highway Authority. I'd like to direct my question to Trish. When you talk about bankability of a project and maybe the bank's interest to invest in a particular project, and you can juxtapose this against the SDGs, the 17 goals, no poverty, zero hunger, and the rest. I'd like to ask you, how have you addressed no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being in assessing bankability of the projects that you have dealt with? And I think this question goes to the gentleman from the banking side, the SDG. I know most people come to the banks to borrow money, and then the bank is expecting to get a return. But when you look at issues of no poverty, like say a poor man enters the bank, he actually is hungry. How would you be able to assess his request with looking at your criteria for assessing bankability? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. The first question is a simple yes or no. Do you do sponsorships? And if so, how does it work?
So at Vered, we actually have a sister, we set up the Vered Foundation. And the purpose of the Vered Foundation is actually to do exactly some of what you're saying. So sort of historically, we have helped, and actually through the Vered Foundation brought it into sort of our partner companies, and I think maybe this addresses your point you made as well, but helping students who didn't quite have the means go to school. We've given them scholarships. We've done work in communities with regards to, to exactly to your point around boreholes and making sure that there's they have access to clean drinking water and things like that. So absolutely, those are things that we definitely look at, that we're very conscious about, both at the Vered level and then even within our partner companies as well. So yes, we definitely do look at those things, and we try very much to support those things.
How about SGSS?
Yes, so in SG, as many of the, I would say, private companies in the country, we do have a corporate and social responsibility budget that we have as we manage every single year. We have a numerous of projects that we sponsor, and we actually even have one orphanage that we sponsor this year. We've been giving a big donation for the orphanage, and we are looking to grow some of those children in the orphanage and also take some of them into the internship in Société Générale. It's true that in a country like Ghana, I mean, we have a lot of needs compared to what we can actually propose, but at least as far as we are concerned at our little contribution, we have a budget that we do monitor this way. And at the group level as well, we do have a capacity. There's a Africa Foundation, which actually can also support some large-scale projects in different countries in Africa. As I mentioned, we are in 19 countries, so we actually use that budget from time to time. Wherever we believe that there is a very significant project, we can push to get some financing, to support that. And we'll come back later to other questions, but I think there are quite a few initiatives that we can do to support, the poverty.
Excellent. So that takes me actually to that question. It was talking about the tension between projects that need a financial return and the reality on the ground, where many social interventions that can drive the SDGs may not be bankable. Whilst this panel was about bankable projects, I think it's still good to address that. How do you get financing for your project if it's not bankable? Scott, do you have any reflections? And then we'll go around. If you do, have reflections on this. If not, maybe any of the other panelists could chime in.
Okay, maybe I can start on this question. So As I mentioned before, as a bank, we don't really see a non-bankable project. I mean, again, we have very, very small customers who are, managing their business in the family with 2-3 people, up to very large corporate with, thousands of staff, which are customer of the bank. So very small businesses up to the large corporate. So the way we see this is that, we evaluate different projects completely differently, the expectation is not only in a return in terms of the amount of money, but also in terms of the impact. Because as I mentioned, if the impact is clearly identified, we can also find a financing partner to support us and also to share the risk. Because at the end of the day, it's also a matter of risk sharing. And there are numerous organizations who are sharing the risk on very small businesses, on different sectors, like agriculture, for instance. So we have those kind of, partners with whom we can partnership to actually share the risk when it comes to small enterprises. And to your question regarding no hunger and things like that. So what we believe in the bank is that in our countries in Africa, Ghana is not an exception. 80%, even more, of the people are actually working in the small and medium enterprises. So at the end of the day, what it means is that for us to have no hunger, you need to have a job. And to have a job, most likely, 80% of the people will be working in the small enterprises. So what we are doing as a bank, and is part of our SDG strategy, is to increase significantly our financing on the small and medium enterprises. Okay, and this is where we believe that it will help for people to be able to have some activities, to have some jobs, and therefore to reduce the hunger. However, the small and medium enterprises is also risky. And this will come back to what we're saying. So we are working on this angle, on trying to also work with our partners so we can share the risk. It can be, public partners, but also some multilateral partners where we have different programs to support various governments to share the risk for these small enterprises. Last but not least, as I mentioned, is that sometimes when SMEs, CEOs are coming with the idea, they have the idea, but they don't know how to transform the idea into, a real business. So we are creating also these, I will say, space to provide them the partnerships that they need to understand how to transform their business to move forward. But again, this is what we do at our scale is still small, because 80% for a country like Ghana, you can think about, how many small businesses will be necessary to grow, for the country to actually survive in the long run as the population is being multiplied as we grow.
Great. And we had a question that was around what are the common mistakes that young entrepreneurs make, and what do you do to support them? I'll just throw it out so any of the panel can understand that. And then Trish, there was a specific question to you on Ghanaian and Nigerian small entrepreneurs. So Scott.
Thank you. So to pick up the question on some of the common mistakes, I think from what we've seen is around taking into consideration the risks associated with a project. As often one can be quite optimistic and think about the benefits, which is excellent, and that needs to happen. But it's also important to be realistic about the risks and the changing risk environment into the future. So just to name to state a couple of examples, this would be thinking about ensuring that there's the right kind of governance and legislation and law is in place to support the development of your type of project in the country. This is not just a planning phase, but also during construction, operation and maintenance. It's thinking about engaging with the stakeholders on the ground where the project will be located to ensure that this project will be good and stable for its life. And additionally, to think about the kind of climate risks that might affect it. Is it a project that might be at risk of, flooding in the future or other kinds of climatological risks? So just a couple of points there, but that sort of come under understanding the broader risk environment.
And I mean, to your question, I think a lot of the the mistakes that I see are maybe the exact opposite of what I opened with, right? So in terms of people coming without a proven concept, you might have a great idea, it sounds good, but how are you actually going to execute that? Because it's one thing having an idea or having a concept, but it's another thing actually executing it, showing proof of concept. And I think people need to spend time actually trying to work it out and sort of in the first, take a year, take 2 years, whatever that is, but work out some of the early kinks, some of the problems that you see yourself. And try to fix those so that by the time you step to an investor, you already know what the pitfalls are, you already know some of the things that don't work, you've been able to refine your plan. Another thing is really about the experience. Now, to your point, I mean, they're young investors, or sorry, they're young entrepreneurs, maybe they don't have a wealth of experience. You may not have that wealth of experience, but there are other people who do. There are other people who could be on your advisory board. They don't necessarily have to work in your company 24/7, but you can lean on their advice, you can lean on their expertise, you can draw them in. Maybe they can be a chair, maybe they can be a special advisor, but really get that experience. There are people who are doing what you've already done at some point. Reach out to them, get their experience, get them to give you input, so that at least you have people who have that track record and you're learning from that experience, even if it's not necessarily your own. Another bit, and I mean, you're exactly right about the risks. Everyone is very optimistic about their idea because you're closest to it and you see an opportunity and you're supposed to be excited about it. You're the greatest proponent of that plan. But for a moment, put the shoe on the other foot. Be the devil's advocate. Tear your deal apart. Tear the opportunity apart. Where could it fail? Where has it failed? Who else tried this and what did they fail at? And how were they able to fix it? Then also just look at, case studies of people who've done it successfully. What made them successful? How were they successful? Would you have access to those same resources that made them successful? If not, what will you do to make sure that your enterprise is successful? So really take the pains, I would say more than anything, to tear your project apart. Find every way that it could fail. Because when you're bringing it to an investor, that's what they're looking at. They see the headlines, but they're looking at ways to mitigate that risk. And if you've done a lot of that homework, it shows that you thought sort of a little bit deeper and a little bit more thoroughly. And I think a really important thing is also think of the partners that you want, right? Think a lot about the stage of the business that you're in. Think about where you want to go and think about, is this person the right partner that I want? So for instance, if you are maybe a startup, you don't necessarily, and I don't know, maybe you want someone who's going to bring in technical expertise. Maybe you want someone who's done it before, who has that track record. Maybe their company isn't $100 million large, but you're starting from, maybe your business is only 10,000 CDs. Look for someone whose business is worth maybe 100,000 CDs. Partner with them, find a way to grow your business, right? So think about the partners that you need for the stage of your business and where you are at that point in time. And perhaps that speaks to your question around, how do we get funding for some of these businesses that aren't necessarily bankable on day one, but there's a need for it. Think of who it is that you can approach at that particular point in the life cycle of the project, right? And maybe after you've invested or you've got sort of grants or you've got support or you've got sponsorship, that then increases your business or increases your capacity to a certain level where, perhaps, we've been able to deal with these initial difficulties. Perhaps there's a way to make an aspect of it bankable. Perhaps there's a way to create, to tack it onto something else that is bankable, and then you take it to investors, and then you can grow it. I think oftentimes people don't take the time to think through the different ways that you can skin a cat, really. So I'd say take that effort, take the time, take a step back, and think through the different ways that you can solve a problem. And you actually be really surprised by how many different stakeholders you can bring to come into your aid to help further your plans. And let me cheat a little bit. And I think, you'd asked a question around, there's still how you're addressing poverty, how you're addressing all of these other issues. To your point, you're right. A lot of the business is in the SME and micro SME space. And the way we think about it at Verard would be to say, how can we support these small businesses to grow so that the people who are in these businesses, the workers, are able to support their families and their friends? I mean, let's be honest, especially in our culture, everyone has an ebusiaping, or, if something goes wrong, everyone goes to them for school fees, or everyone goes to, it's just the way our societies are made, and everyone has that one person that they go to if something happens to the family. They're supposed to bring money for a funeral, or bring money for education, or bring money for healthcare bills, or whatever else. Now, if you can create a space, right, where more people are educated, more people are employed, more people are earning, and so more of these people can help their family, can help their relatives, can help send more of their kids to school, then you're addressing the question of, helping to eradicate poverty, helping to bring more people into education, helping to bring more people into sort of the formal sector, the formal economy, and giving them a better chance at really the lives that we all want, right? So that's the way that we think about it. I mean, we're the first signatory to the Principles on Responsible Investing, so the first West African private equity fund to sign on to this. And it's completely voluntary, but it's the way that we think about investing, to build communities, to build families, to build companies, so that they in turn can support their work.
She doesn't have the network, she doesn't know the risks, but then she has the drive. How is maybe the bank, how is the investment, how is the structure, guys, using the data you have? The banks have a lot of data on various businesses that have started and failed, the mistakes they made. Investors, you have the data on what works, what doesn't work. But then you are looking for fully baked entrepreneurs to invest in. At the end of the day, as an investment, the entrepreneurs get a share, you also get a return on your investment. But then it's like we are in a game where you're looking for fully baked entrepreneurs. So my question here is that, in as much as solving the SDGs, how best are you using the data, the bank, billions of data you have on what works, what doesn't work? The investors, billions of data you have on what works, what doesn't work. So that people working in education, the lady wanted to make brilliant people go to school. Our company making sure people become well.
Sorry to interrupt. We're running out
Thank
of
you.
time, but I think the question has been quite clear. What we'll do is that we'll use that as the final round, and very brief comments from everyone, and then maybe I'll add, sorry, one more question. You have to make it basically 2 sentences.
Okay, my name is Hazel Hinston. My company is Awama Production. So I want to ask in relation to, let's say if you have a project on climate change, maybe it's more like a social project, you want to educate people more about how to be able to, just in the climate area. So when I come to you, how would you be looking at my project? Because obviously this is not something this is something that's supposed to impact the society, but it's not something that readily would end where I will be making profit from. Yeah.
So for that question, I think maybe in the earlier round, we talked about the sponsorship option, where you go to the foundation that is more looking at not things that have revenue, but things that have impact. So look at foundations, look at sponsorships from corporate social responsibility. You can look at individual donors in the community. And sometimes you can look at who else cares about the problem. So my organization, Reach for Change, we funded a project before which was working with drug addicts who were harassing tourists. And the gentleman who ran the project got the hotels to pay for the program, because that meant that their guests would not get harassed. So sometimes you need to be innovative also in the fundraising to look at who else cares about this problem or feels some pain. So then I hope that answers your question. And then to the question about what are you doing with your data, financial institutions and UN Ops, and how can you use that data to help small businesses?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say that from my perspective, it's a little bit less about how businesses have been successful or not in acquiring financing, but really just to help using data and big data now to help try to underpin very strong business cases, okay? So one of the things you need to do is to demonstrate through time what the needs are, what the market size is for your services that you want to provide with your project. So it's about bringing together data on what you think the market share might be into the future, maybe understanding what the population projections might be, the economic activity.
You should know more than your business, more about your business than me, so that by the time you step to me, you're telling me, listen, Trish or whoever it is, this is my business. This is where we are. This is the market opportunities that I see. This is the way to get there. This is the help that I need. Are you a good partner for me? Can you give me expertise? Can you give me access to markets? Can you give me access to data? I need data on X, Y, and Z. And then we're able to step in and we're able to be the help. We're able to help promote the business. We're able to help catalyze it. But if it's the other way around, and perhaps that's something that we should have touched on as well, around mistakes or errors that people come to us. You shouldn't be coming to us from a position of, this is all I know, this is all I can do, please help me go a little bit, do a little bit more. You're trying to build industries. You're trying to build really businesses that are hopefully transformational, that are changing lives, that are employing hundreds and hundreds of people or thousands of people. Like I was saying to you in the first instance, this business that we invested in, when she started, she had only 50 people. Right? They're right now at 2,300. We didn't employ those 2,300 people. She went out, she found herself other people, just co-founders like her, who had done it before, who had experience, who had access to market, so that by the time it got to us, we weren't saying, okay, go to this market, hire these people, do this job. They told us, this is what we want to do. This is the help that we need. Can you be a good partner to us in terms of getting us access, getting us data, helping to strengthen corporate governance and those sorts of things? So please look at us not as the people who will fix all of your problems or tell you what it is. You tell us what the problems, and then in a way, actually, you need to be interviewing us. You need to be figuring out, yes, you're bringing capital, but what else are you bringing? Are you bringing that knowledge base? Are you bringing relationships? So it needs to be very much from a position of power and knowing where you want to take the company, knowing what your weaknesses are, knowing where you need the help, so that we can then step in and say, yes, I understand where you're trying to go. This is the way that I can help. And then it's a meaningful partnership.
Okay. Ernest.
Just to add on this that, she's perfectly right, obviously, but there are other institutions who can actually support you. So when you're coming from a pure idea, before you get to the point where you're coming to see an investor on a bank, you can go through, a typical startup, house where we can actually nurture the startup, nurture your ideas, helping you to bring your ideas to life, analyzing your market opportunities, building your business case, having a good business plan, so that when you come to the bank, not only you have gotten all this kind of expertise and documentation, but you yourself is comfortable that, yes, you have a good product, you have a good vision, you have really a project which is going to deliver. And then you need to convince us. And we will more under the side saying that, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? But there are numerous of additional partners which are not here, which normally helps you from the idea to a business plan. Because looking for a financing for a project is not the first step. The idea is the first step, but between the idea and the financing, you have other steps. I think we discussed in the previous panel.
Thank you very much. And to add to that, you can look at incubation, acceleration. You can look to join associations like Social Enterprise Ghana that's partnering. You'll find people with t-shirts with Social Enterprise Ghana, or go to socialenterprise.net and you will find connections to incubators, accelerators, and hubs. But the most powerful can be finding a mentor who has grown a business and sharing with them, or just going through the learning curve yourself. My first business failed, and the second business I did with co-founders. It's now 10 years old, and we had a great celebration. So going with others who have the knowledge you don't have is really, really effective. So thank you, panel. Thank you, audience. This has been such a delightful conversation, and we look forward to seeing more impactful businesses.
Amalate, an amazing panelist. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it up for them. Many thanks to you. How about a group photograph? The beautiful thing about today's deliberations is how one theme feeds into the other. What we've discussed so far, ladies and gentlemen, leads us safely into another set of discussions which would border around the future of cocoa, opportunities for Ghanaian entrepreneurs, how to get your business investor ready. And all these will be taking place on the sidelines of the fair and expo, which will also be ongoing. these talks will take place here. So after a while at the expo, please make your way here, and you'll be glad you did, where we would have these amazing resource persons from the GIPC, from the cocoa sector, and another private sector investor person. Ladies and gentlemen, these discussions will still go on for the next 45 minutes, 1 hour, during lunch. Lunch is outside, right at the garden. Our ushers will give you your cheats. It is your visa for lunch. Bon appetit, enjoy, and we'll see you back again shortly.